Welcome back, everyone, to this week's TV episode. As Trevor and I promised, we will be covering Sales 101 this week. And really, we just kind of want to touch on, our experience in prior industries with sales. Trevor and I have, pretty different backgrounds. So just really kind of giving our viewers a sense of the sales experience that we've had prior to working with Swoon, and then some of the takeaways and some of the learns we've already had thus far in our Swoon career. So what are some of the things that, you've done so far that you've had to, edit your craft to make that business happen?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing, kind of COVID related, kind of just where we are, as a society. And I know it seems as though, empathy has almost become like a buzzword. You see that on every webinar, you see it, in every LinkedIn post, but it is just paramount right now. I mean, people are burnt out. People are waking up and checking their work phones. People are staying up late on the computer, and they're just always being reached out to by, people in our shoes. And, while I know you and I do put a lot of effort into making those genuine, authentic reach outs, so that they're not kind of so harsh, you know, it was something that I really put a lot of effort into is, if I'm going to reach out to Vince, I want to have a solid foundation of who Vince is kind of outside of his role, whether if it's just, I see, in a picture of Vince, he's got a Bulls, little pennant in his background. So, I'll mention that, it's small things like that that just show, A, you've done a little bit of research, and B, I actually care who Vince is kind of outside of just somebody that could land me a sale. So I'd say that was the first big adjustment I had to make. A, in that virtual world with people experiencing burnout, and then B, like you had mentioned, just being in an industry where you have 20 plus thousand other firms all reaching out, trying to, make that person a potential client.
So I'd like to ask you then, have you ever had, an experience where you tried to get to know a potential client a little bit more, and they had a more negative reaction to you, maybe doing your additional homework on who they were, and how did you handle that?
So that's actually a really good question. So far, I haven't had any backlash on the personal side of things. I have had an instance where I reached out to somebody that was a hiring manager at a company. I thought I did my research and tailored my messaging pretty well to what would be um, poignant for them.
Mhm.
It did not resonate, and actually it was awesome. I mean, he responded to my outreach. He gave some feedback, just as to how I was off, in what I was saying. We work with, brands X, Y, and Z, and he's like, hey, like, those aren't nearly relevant to kind of the startup culture that we're bringing in here. So that was the initial reaction of that. I take feedback pretty well. I've learned to do that. So I responded. I was like, hey, I really appreciate it. I now see how I was off there. I forget what else I said in there, but didn't hear back from him for a little while. And then I thought about that for quite a while, and I noticed there was so much of his feedback that I was actually incorporating into my, daily reach out. So I just genuinely one day I was thinking about it, and I was like, I'll let him know, so I sent an email just kind of with what I had learned, how I use things, and I got a response, and there's actually, a role that he thinks that we might be able to help them fill to really help spearhead some new initiatives for their team. So, it really does pay dividends to take feedback, I think, and especially taking it and implementing it. So that was also a big learn for me. And I think it's something that, a lot of companies are starting to do. Swoon does very well, our division specifically, but just the coaching versus just managing, being coached to be better versus being managed to just hit metrics. I think that's something Swoon does incredibly well. And I think that's what's starting to differentiate good companies from great companies. And I think that's where you're starting to see the most growth out of your individuals.
Definitely agree. And I think it's a more of a unique situation that, he presented you with feedback about something that you were sure about. And then, on the contrary, he's like, no, this is how you were off. And, obviously people are busy. I think we've learned that even more now. People are super busy and they might not have the time, or if it's not super pertinent to them, that's why your message, goes by the wayside. So I think for somebody to actually take the time and give you feedback, but then obviously, feedback's great, but if you don't implement it like you did, then you didn't learn anything. It just became more noise. But I do think that's like a super unique situation, because typically, we won't get that literal feedback on what your messaging was, and why it is or isn't accurate. So I mean, I think that's a huge win on like a lot of different ways, and the fact that you were able to bring it back to, you know, really considering what he said, use it in additional outreach, and then ultimately potentially have some business with him. I think that just bodes well to, like you said, taking criticism or taking feedback very well, and using that to hone your craft. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
and I think, it definitely isn't a huge part of the sales 101 thing that we're talking about right now, but I would say there's a heavy importance on never stopping yourself from sending a note that you think might actually be very genuine, authentic, even if it isn't really selling your product. I think if there is somebody that saw a webinar of, or a post on LinkedIn that really resonated with you, you can send, if it did resonate with you, send them a note and let them know, and even if you're not hard selling your product, I mean, there's a chance, all your information is there. If they see the genuine, authentic reach out, the curiosity just kind of builds itself. Oh, Vince sent this nice note, what does he do? Here's his signature, here's this website. And then it kind of draws people in to do their own research.
Sure. And I think, an overlying theme of all this, because although I think sales 101 might be too general of an umbrella for all of this,
Picked a lot.
yeah. I do think what you're talking about is extremely important. And I think it also lends to the homework like the homework that has to be done if you really want to be successful long-term in this industry. There's obviously timing is a huge proponent of what we do. The timing for our clients, the timing for us, the candidates on the market, all of that aside, but truly the preparation, prior to reaching out to, these potential clients is really a key. Are there things, noteworthy about them in the news? Have chief level executives been on webinars, how you reference, noteworthy things that can make that additional connection, ultimately open the door. Because when we are reaching out, you are creating an interruption in most cases in somebody's day. So what is it about that interruption that makes it super pertinent to them? And that's the in. And then, you can utilize the rest of your preparation to obviously bring it home, because at the end of the day, it's a business, and what we're selling needs to make sense for them. It needs to make sense on both sides. So I think that we've certainly covered, more than we even anticipated for today. So I think that's a nice jumping off point we talked a lot about homework and preparation, but what does that actually look like? Coming to you next week.
Nice.